All right, let's go ahead and get started so that we can get everybody out of here on time. So I'm going to be your host, Robert Erie, IPEP Risk Management Public Entities. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about body mechanics and how to avoid injuries, particularly with the upper body. This affects everybody throughout our membership. No matter if you're a school, if you are a municipality, you are a county, those are the leading injuries that everybody sees within their organization. So we'll go through, we'll talk about so what does that look like, what should we do, and then I'll also interject, some ideas and different types of things that we can think about to try to help avoid those. So if you would, just make sure you mute everything so that we can get through this. If you do have questions, then certainly you can either put it in the chat, raise your hand, or email us later on. Corey Burnett is on as well, our risk management or IT, or I'm sorry, the digital risk manager. So he can certainly help out with a lot of things as well, programs or online services and things. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Bear with me because I've already had some technical issues this morning. So again, ask the expert using proper body mechanics to avoid injuries. So again, these are going to be things that we take a look at, strains and sprains and twists, and these types of injuries are injuries that typically are going to take some time. I think average of 60 to 90 days in order for these to resolve, because a lot of times we don't know exactly what the damage is until over time to see what happens. You're not going to go straight to the doctor and they're going to throw you right into an MRI to look at this. So sometimes we just it's a waiting game to see where this looks like. And, another thing that we talked about, some of these things, especially as we talk about with our backs, these are not things that just all of a sudden today we hurt our back in most circumstances. It's things that behaviors that we've done over time that has led up to the degradation of, or, maybe discs or having particular back injuries over time. So, so we take why is ergonomics matter? So again, muscular skeletal disorders are a leading cause of workplace injuries. Again, we talked about that before. No matter whose experience we were to bring up, it's probably going to have some of these ergonomics, or I like to call body mechanics types of injuries. Risk are often seen from routine tasks. So it's things that, this is the way we've always done it. So maybe it's time to take a look and see, is there different ways to do that? And technology could be something that helps with that. One of the things with us, our sewer folks and our highway and street people is, getting jackhammering out. Well, in the olden days, it was drag out the air compressor, grab that jackhammer, and start away. And it's a lot of labor-intensive involvements. But now with backhoes and things like that, you can put that needle on there, and now we've eliminated a lot of that heavy lifting and routine things that's tearing down our body, and still accomplishing the same type of things. So again, prevention starts with awareness and good habits. So a lot of times we take a look and see, why is this injury happening, and what do we need to do? Maybe we need to adjust the way that we deal with that particular program. All right. What you're going to learn. So as we go through there, hopefully you're going to be able to recognize the importance of ergonomics, define musculoskeletal disorders, identify ergonomic risk factors, recognize musculoskeletal disorder symptoms, identify control methods for MSD hazards, and perform tasks safely to avoid musculoskeletal injuries and illnesses. So again, as we go through this, we take a look and you go back and from this information, take a look at some of these programs that you got. Hey, is this something else that we can do that would lessen the likelihood of people developing these types of injuries? So let's start off with understanding ergonomics. We adapt the job to fit the worker. So this is OSHA's requirement, and no matter if it's OSHA or not, it's just the right thing to do to be able to adapt, that job to the worker. What's that mean? Well, um, make it as comfortable as you can for that worker so that we have less likelihood of them doing strains, sprains, things like that. So let's take a look at let's say a pallet of whatever product is, and the job performance is to take things off of that pallet. Well, thinking about things, instead of having that pallet on the floor, maybe we have a fork truck and we raise it up to the level of the worker. Or, you know what, there's actually products out there that as the weight comes off of that pallet, it will continuously rise up so that we're not having to bend over, stand back up, turn, twist, all that kind of things that are putting us in harm's way for those musculoskeletal disorders types of injuries. So just one example as to what it looks like to adapt the job to the worker, and how that looks in those different types of injury or in different types of processes. Um, Ergonomics and OSHA compliance. So again, you'll hear as we talk about OSHA compliance and things of that nature, and a lot of you that I've been out to and dealt with, OSHA compliance, should always be, that's a minimal standard. So OSHA says, hey, this is the least that we need to do. So when we talk about OSHA compliance and things like that, we shouldn't be worried about because we're always ahead of what that is anyway. So even though a formal standard OSHA cannot take under general duty clause, so what it basically is general duty clause is, you've got the right, or the employer, has a responsibility to provide a workplace that's free of recognized hazards. So musculoskeletal disorders, that could fall underneath the general duty clause because we continuously have injuries and we haven't turned and addressed, especially if it's the same process each time. So that's kind of where, if there's no regulation for OSHA, they can come back and say, hey, look, you're having a lot of injuries here, you're having a lot of issues, and you're not addressing it. So just a little bit about the general duty clause. All right. All right, MSD, or musculoskeletal disorders, and their impact. Again, these are types of things that are going to affect you, or could very well affect you the rest of your life. I tell a story a lot about a former employer when I was, with them. I've got a friend that still works at that location to this day, had worked there since he was out of high school, and just recently had to have a total back fusion because of all the years of bad behaviors. And like I said, we talked about the jackhammer, things like that. He's in his 20s and 30s, and he was strong, and I'll grab that and I'll pull that out. Well, again, eventually that leads up, or that catches up to him, and now he is in his 50s and he's having to deal with the repercussions of those behaviors, with a bad back, and again, his back being fused. And he doesn't have any grandchildren right now, but when he does have grandchildren, he's not even going to be able to pick them up and things like that. So keeping that kind of thing in mind, with these types of injuries, how it's going to affect you and how it's going to affect your life. So injuries affected, muscles, nerves, joints, tendons and ligaments, cartilage, blood vessels. So this is all these types of things, of a wide variety of facets that is going to affect these types of areas when we're looking at strains and sprains and these types of injuries. Common musculoskeletal disorders, carpal tunnel syndrome, lower back pain, tendonitis, trigger finger. So there's just a few examples as to, some of the processes that we do may cause some of these things, and therefore we need to take a look and see. We take a look at tendonitis. Again, a thing that we dealt with, or I dealt with in the past, was again going back to the jackhammer, and it would create a lot of issues for people with tendonitis and tingling and things like that in their hands and their arms because of all that vibration over time. Done some research and found that there's a such thing out there as vibration gloves. So anytime that the process was happening, is they would don those gloves. Those gloves would absorb a lot of that vibration, so that it wasn't trending back into their bodies and wasn't causing issues. So just little things like that, that help out in these types of injuries. Other common musculoskeletal disorders, again, just some of these different types of things: herniated discs, arm vibration syndromes. We talked about that before. If the process is, we're continuously doing that, then the body adapts to that. Rotator cuff. That's a huge, where people rip or tear their rotator cuff, and those are pretty serious injuries. So again, taking a look at some of these different types of common injuries, and how do we look to prevent those? All right. Why is MSD or hard to spot? So again, these are types of things that, with whether it be age or, well, this is just the job that we do or whatever, you can start with no symptoms at all, and then over time can start to take some, progress a little bit at a time. It takes weeks, months, years to show up. We talked about that bad back earlier with my friend. So again, it could take some time. A lot of times we're not going to, we may very well be a trigger point to where we have a strain or something like that. But a lot of times, again, it's just the behaviors over time of doing that that's going to affect those parts. Because by one big injury or many of the small ones. A lot of times we leave work and, well, it's just, yeah, I'm sore, but I'm sore every day from work. Well, those are signs that we need to take a look and see, why are we sore? Are we sore because, we were just on vacation for 2 weeks and came back, and now we're getting acclimated back to our routine? Or is it just, hey, every time I do this process, I come out feeling sore? And maybe we need to take a look at that process and see what that looks like. Occurs both on and off the job. Okay, so it's not just necessarily when you're working, but it could be affect you of whatever your hobbies are and things like that. You could certainly affect some of these injuries as well. So recognizing the signs of the MSD. So common symptoms, again, back and neck, shooting pain, stiffness in your shoulders, pain, stiffness, loss of mobility, arms and legs, shooting pain, numbness, elbows and knees, pain, swelling, stiffness, and soreness. So again, as we're doing some of these processes and we're coming out and we're feeling some of this stuff, it should be red flags where we take a look and see, what is this process? What part of this process might be causing this, and how do we address this? Again, it might be a lifting issue, and maybe it is what it is. This is just the way we have to do this job, or maybe it's something that we could take a look and see. I've been doing a OSHA 10-hour class this week and talking to them about a procedure that we had at the city of South Bend. We would have a truck that would go out and pick up dead animals. Well, we were seeing that, typically it was just one person in the truck, and they were to maybe go out and pick up deer, which are pretty heavy, a lot for one person to handle. So as we spec'd out a truck for that operation. We just attached a crane to it so that, you know what, now we've taken the lifting element out of from our employee and let a mechanical means do that. So, and it also reduced a lot of our injuries um, as from that operation. So just an example of something that we may look at. Common MSD syndromes, again, hands and feet, hands, wrists, swelling, numbness, loss of strength. Again, there are some red flags as to, you know, we'll take a look and see why is this happening. Fingers, jerking moment, movements, or loss of strength, mobility, or feeling. Thumbs, pain at the base, feet and toes, numbness, tingling, stiffness, burning. So all of these are symptoms that, again, should be a red flag. Why is this happening? And, you know, what can we do for that? The outward signs of MSD, swelling, inflammation of the joints, shaking hands, you know, uncontrollably, um, wrists and arms, grabbing or cradling arms, limping, stiff back. So all of these things that, you know, sometimes we may just, you know, just we're getting older and this is what happens. Well, again, if we're continuously doing a particular process and we're always coming out feeling that way, then we should take a look at that process and see maybe what could we do to lessen those. Act fast on MSD symptoms. Again, speak up, report those right away. Again, hey, may not be nothing, but you know what? Today, whenever I was doing this particular process, you know, my back is tight and sore. You know, certainly report that so that we can take a look, and other eyes are looking at it as well, so that we can, you know, assist even on the IPEP side. Hey, this process, should we maybe look at implementing this? Okay. Get checked out, get medical attention. So if it continues on as, hey, doc, it's been like this for 2 or 3 weeks, you know, let them take a look and see what's going on. And is there more to it than just stiff and you know, getting old? Act early, prevent long-term injuries. So again, getting on top of these types of things, whether it be through medical or most certainly, again, as we're talking about processes and procedures, looking to see, you know, hey, this, no matter who does this process, they always come out with a sore back or whatever. So we need to probably look at that and how do we adjust that? Understanding risk factors of industrial ergonomics. So again, water MSD, risk factors, repetitive motion, forceful extraction, awkward or some postures, contact stress or pressure points, vibrations from tools or machinery, poor design or non-ergonomic tools. So again, whatever that process is, and sometimes it may just be, this is the process that we have to do. Is there different things that we can look at to mitigate that? And it doesn't always mean that we've got to throw money at the idea or the problem. It could be that, you know what, maybe we got a jackhammer process. And in the past, has always been today, if you're assigned to the jackhammer, you're doing that jackhammer for 8 hours a day. Well, maybe we take a look and see, well, maybe we do a rotation with that. So now we've just implemented some administrative controls. So now somebody will operate it for 2 hours, and then somebody else come in and operate it for another 2 hours. We develop a routine or a rotation for that job so that we're less than the likelihood of one individual being hurt. Or like I said, we research and find that, you know what, there's vibration gloves out there. So we implement that into our PPE for this particular process. So along with that and rotation, then certainly should start to help reduction for these types of injuries and illnesses. All right. MSD risk factors, repetitive motion, again, stress on muscles and tendons, risk and increase with numb the muscles use, amount of the force used, duration and the speed of the motion. Examples, raising and lowering the arms repeatedly. So whatever that process is, we talked about before, adapting the job to the employee or to the employee. So maybe it's something that instead of having to reach over our head all the time to do this process, maybe we can implement things to where we can bring that process down, or we get onto an elevated maybe it's a ladder or step ladder or a platform that we get up closer to the work product so that we're not having to raise our arms and keep them over our head all during that process. MSD risk factors, again, forceful excursion, so inflammation of tendons, nerves, and joints. So are we having to do a lot of impactful things in this particular job? Risk depends on the type of grip, weight of the object, body posture, tasks done during this duration. So we take a look in the manufacturing world. We've got a lot of boxes that we have to, unload from a pallet or whatever the case is. And these particular things, maybe we take a look at and we're unloading, let's say 500 pieces, is the expectation of the employee. So maybe there's some tools that we can implement. And in the manufacturing world and distribution and things, they've got suction devices to where you go over to the product, you push a button with it, it'll grab a hold of that, pick it up for you. So we've just taken away a lot of that force on the human body for that particular process, and therefore reducing a lot of these types of injuries for folks. Awkward postures, again, taking a look and see what does that look like for the process. We've got sore muscles and tendons, contributing factors. What are some of these types of things? We're reaching overhead, we're twisting, we're turning, we're having to put our body into a position that we would normally not be in. Sometimes, this may be especially with our first responders, stuff like that, it may just be what it is. But if we've got a process that we're continuously having to do this process, and we're continuously putting our body into awkward positions, then we need to take a look and see how do we change that. So some examples would be lifting while twisting, reaching and turning. So again, making sure that if we've got a process to where somebody's picking something up and, moving it over to something else instead of twisting the trunk of our body, that we're educating employees to pick it up, take 2 steps, and then set it back down, as we turn, instead of, twisting our bodies and stuff like that our body's not going to like over time. Contact stress, again, pressure in nerves, tendons, blood vessels, repetitive types of injuries, grip and strength required. So again, a lot of these types of things are, how do we mitigate this to lessen the effects on the human body for these types of processes? Vibration affects the tendons, muscles, joints, nerves. Again, contributing factors, we talked about prolonged grip, vibration from the tools, poor power tool maintenance. So, we don't have a good preventative maintenance program. And now over time, the tool gets older and the vibration gets more and more. And maybe it's just something as simple as having a good routine that the manufacturer suggests every year you go and get this tool, reevaluated or tuned up or whatever the case is to lessen that effect. So just some examples as to vibration again. And one of the biggest ones I think in your world is going to be, the jackhammers and things like that. All right, prevention and practice. So again, ergonomic control methods, engineering controls. So those of you that, I've come out and done class, again, we talk about there's 3 different elements that OSHA says that we should look at. One is going to be engineering controls. Second is going to be administrative controls. And then finally, PPE or personal protective equipment we're going to should throw somebody into. So as we take a look at these ergonomic control methods, we take a look at that process and we see that is there a way that we can engineer and control that out? So basically what that means is, do we change the layout or the tool or something like that that lessens the likelihood of somebody getting hurt? Ultimately, sometimes, we totally engineer it out to where it's an automatic process and we don't have employees involved. But that's not always the case. Work practices and controls, using a neutral posture and proper techniques. So taking a look at that process and seeing what can we do that lessens the likelihood of um, stress on the body. If we can't engineer control or we can't engineer that out, then we're going to take a look at administrative controls, rotating tasks. So we just talked about that a minute ago. Somebody on a jackhammer, instead of 8 hours a day, maybe we rotate it to where they're only on there a couple hours a day. Somebody else comes in. We talk about administrative controls. So, rotation, maybe it's a heat stress type of thing, and maybe we need to alter our hours so that we're in a cooler environment and different hours. And then finally, if the engineering controls and the administrative controls do not work, then we are going to resort to personal protective equipment. So again, provide a barrier where methods are not enough. So we talked about the vibration gloves. So we've done rotation, we've done some things, but we still got a lot of vibration to that human body. So now we're going to put a barrier there that's going to absorb some of that vibration, as the vibration is not going to be absorbed by our body. So just an example that we may take a look at, PPE is not always, our personal protective equipment is not always our first go-to. A lot of times we think that it is, but again, we've got to understand with PPE, human body's not designed to have that restriction all the time. And maybe it's something as much as a uh, mask or a ventilation, things like that, or something as simple as gloves. So again, what does that do to the human body if we do put them into PPE? Does that add additional stress? Putting ergonomics into action, again, conduct a job hazard analysis. Can't stress enough, making sure that we take a look at each and every process and we vet that out. Where are some of the opportunities? Where are some of the hazards? Where are some of the areas that we could maybe improve and take away some of that stress on the human body and move it to a tool, or move it to, by design change of that process, lessen that likely. Estimate an MSD reporting and response process. So making sure that you've got, if in your organization, hey, if this happens and you come to, here's a reporting process, so we need to take a look at that. Maybe it's a situation where those go to our safety committees, or those go to some sort of review committee to say, hey, in the last month, we've had 3 of these injuries. So let's take a look at this process. What can we do to change this process? Okay. And certainly, I can never stress enough making sure that we're getting the input of all the employees, because they're the ones that's doing the job. So they're going to be the ones that's going to be able to help us take a look and see what could we do to reduce the likelihood of some of these types of injuries for those individuals assigned to that. Assign an ergonomics coordinator. So having somebody take a look at, hey, whatever this process is, looking to see what can we do that would minimize the stress on the human body, and be able to continuously finish that process, in a timely manner. Provide employee training. So if we have a process, explain to them and show them here's how you do the process. One of the things that, we're even talking in the social class is, what, we can't just expect, well, this person should just know how to do it. Well, that's not necessarily always the case. Okay. We need to make sure that we show them, train them, walk them through that, so that we know that they understand that, and go from there. Encourage team participation and feedback. So again, get the feedback from the employees. Hey, this is the process, but here, this could change. If we were to do this, maybe that'll help us in the long run. Spotting and reducing MSD hazards. Again, so once a hazard is identified, the next step is to figure out how serious they are and what can be done about them. That's where it's important for input comes in, so that we're getting an input from the end user of that process. You know what the job looks like day to day. So your insight helps shape the real world solutions. So again, getting that feedback, hey, this is what our policies and procedures say on how we do this. But if we were to tweak it this way, or if we were to introduce this, it may help this process. Once a fix is in place, whether it's new tool, a different setup, rotation tasks, or whatever the case is, make sure that we're training that back to everybody as well. So, hey, we made a change in this process, and here's the new process. All right. So again, prevention starts with you. Protect yourself by changing positions, often taking stretch breaks. One of the things that whenever I do classes for ergonomics is I do a demonstration with a piece of toffee that basically you pull that toffee out of the freezer, which simulates, you getting up out of bed, going to work, and the first thing you start to do is go right into a heavy work force. Well, that's going to cause issues with your muscles and tendons and things because they're not warmed up, they're not ready to go, and their likelihood to break. But if we get out and we start, whether it be a stretching program or we start things, slow, get our body used to doing this, and then we're ready to go so that our muscles are warmed up a little bit, and there's a less likelihood that we may have some sort of musculoskeletal disorder or injury in that process. Eliminating and reducing those factors that we've identified, using material handling aids. So again, if it's something that we're having to pick things up, should we take a look and see, is there things that we can implement that will assist in that? Maintain our neutral posture, however, or whenever possible. So again, making sure that we are trying to keep our body in the natural state as much as we can in that process without having to put it into different positions and twisting and unique or unusual positions that the body's not used to. Reporting symptoms immediately, having a process and comfortable that people come and say, hey, you know what, today I was doing this and my back is sore or my arm is sore or whatever the case is, at least start to look at that so that way if it does progress, then we're able to look at that and continuously monitor it, but also more importantly, take a look and see, well, we've had 4 different employees over the last month that's reported this. Let's take a look and see what this task is and how can we improve this. So some key points to remember for ergonomics, help prevent ergonomics by fitting the task to the worker. So again, we started that off early. Do we need to change the design of the work area? So if there's somebody who's in a permanent work area, or do we need to take a look and see, even if it's a field operation or something like that, how can we adjust that work task to fit the employee or the worker a little bit better? MSD affects soft tissue and nervous system. So understanding what effects that has. Those are certainly pretty key, important parts in your body that, once they've been affected, it could cause problems down the road as well. Common risks, again, some of these common injuries, repetitive motions, forceful, awkward positionings, contact stress, vibration. So just some examples of, taking a look at these processes. Does it involve these, and how can we mitigate that? Pain or stiffness, it might be signs of the MSD. Adjust your movement to minimize the strain on the job. So again, that neutral posture. When in doubt, talk to your supervisor or trainer. So again, hey, whenever I do this, it always does this. Let's take a look and see what can we do for that process. Looking at office ergonomics, again, why ergonomics matters in the office setting. So again, we've got a lot of individuals that are in that office setting. So a lot of times we're at a stationary area, and could cause some issues in those areas as well. So looking to reduce those types of MSD, boost production and improve comfort and focus, lowers the cost of these types of injuries, increase job satisfaction and morale, and then saves money by preventing injuries and turnovers. So again, taking a look and see, do we have that office setting set up correct, or set up to be the most comfortable for the individuals? A lot of times when we come in and do surveys, or we do audits of office areas, a lot of times what we find is the person may have to be stretching, several times a day across their desk to pick up a phone, or they may have to be doing some sort of other process that they put their body into a unique position that the body doesn't like. So setting those particular areas up in the office to where within arm's reach, we can do 90% of what our processes are without having to strain or over stretch or anything like that. Recognize the signs and symptoms of the MSD or workers. So again, pain or swelling in the hands, wrist, or forearms, fingers, shoulders, neck, back, elbows, a lot of types of things, again, for the carpal tunnel type of injuries and illnesses. How will the pain feel? Again, it could be tingling, stiffness, discomfort, sore, burning, tingling. So all of these are types of things that if you're finishing up this process, or you're finishing up the day and you're feeling like that, again, that should be red flags to take a look at. What are the outward signs? Again, swelling, inflammation of the joints, shaking your hands, your wrist uncontrollably, massaging the hand and wrist and arms, cradling of the arms. So again, having to your extremities are experiencing things that are not normal. So again, should be a red flag if we take a look and see, why do we do this? What do we do if we experience these types of injuries? So again, computer work areas, head and shoulders. So taking a look and see, keep everything at your desk so that it's eye level sight, so we're not having to look up or look down in those operations, so that we're looking at our monitors, straightforward for the most part. Minimize head rotation, keep your arms close to your body, no extending or reaching out like we talked before, trying to, 90% of your operation is just within the arms or hands reach. Computer stands, workstations, and elbows. So again, taking a look and see, keeping your elbows in a 90-degree, so that we're resting our wrists and things, and we're doing our typing and all that, and not putting them in so that we're having to type overhead or type down too low, things like that, and putting our body into an unnatural position. Computer workstations, again, feet and legs, keeping your knees bent at a 90-degree angle, and keeping your feet on, flat to the floor as much as possible is the, best way to do that. Keeping your back in a good posture in the back, so you're leaning against the backrest of that. And again, you'll see a picture here of somebody ideally doing that. But also, we're taking a look and saying, make sure that that chair that we're using is comfortable, that it fits us. But also taking a look and see what can we do in those circumstances. Should we take a look and see, do we have a computer or a raised computer area, so it gives us an option instead of sitting in a chair doing this all day. Maybe we're able to stand and do some of this work as well, or we're taking frequent breaks. Okay, just some examples of these types of things. Adjust chair adjustments in the seat surface. So, take a look and see, what does this look like? The chair that we're utilizing, because again, we're possibly in this for 8 or 10 hours a day, making sure that it's comfortable, making sure as an organization that maybe we have, as crazy as it sounds, in past lives, I've created a chair policy to where we always had a one base chair for employees as they come in, and then we would be able to adjust the seat, the back, the armrest, and all of that through that same chair, but it's just add-ons so that we're making it comfortable for the individual that's going to be in that chair in long periods of time. Chair adjustments, again, back and the arms, make sure that the backrest is adjusted to an angle lumbar support. Maybe, a lot of times it may have that lumbar support, but if not, there are, pillows that we can, put on there so that it keeps that support of that curved area of your lumbar. Armrest and cushions to support. So again, your armrest, instead of just being a piece of metal, having some sort of cushion there, so that it's a little more comfortable when we're resting our elbows. Computer monitors, again, looking directly in front of you, arm's length, proper height, so that we're not having to look up, look down, look left, right. So for the most part, we're just looking forward. We're able to do all of our work from looking at that in our work area. Neutral keyboard positioning. So again, making sure that we are in a comfortable position as we're utilizing that keyboard. Is it right there, at desk level? Do we have a keyboard tray that we're able to, make it a little more comfortable, so that we're not having to raise our arms to do typing, or we're gonna have to bend over to do typing, so that we're, again, right there at the comfort level. We're doing our typing on that, and then also making sure that we've got, rests and things like that for our wrist and our elbow, or for our wrist and our arms, so that we're not on a hard surface 8 hours a day. Maybe we've got a cushion or a pad or something there that we've got our arms on. Utilizing a mouse. And so again, mouse control, movements from the elbow. So again, we talked about before, making sure that our process or our setup is that we're able to do everything somewhat comfortably, and we're not having to stretch forward, not having to stretch to the left or the right to utilize our mouse. So it's just in a natural position, typically right next to our keyboard, and we're able to move that around comfortably, and we're not having to put our body in any sort of stress to operate that as well. All right, using a laptop. So working with laptops can present ergonomic problems because monitors and keyboards are not separate, which means it's usually achieved either by neck strain, head posture, or while in a good wrist position, postures are not both. So basically, we're utilizing with the we don't have a typical setup that what we would have in the office setting. So we've got a separate monitor, separate keyboard, and all of this. So making sure that we take a look and see what's the most comfortable position we can do. We were actually just talking about this earlier this morning, talking about our police departments, to where they're having to utilize, laptops and things like that in their vehicles. So making sure that, that in their vehicles is their office area. So trying to set that up as much as we can, so that it minimizes the amount of times that they're having to twist their body to turn and look at that, or we're having to, minimize the amount of impact so that we've got our arms resting on something as we're typing on that keyboard. So whatever that looks like, just like we would look at an office setting, we should be looking at, in our police cars, sometimes in our fire trucks, that, that is the office area. So to make sure that we set those work areas up accordingly. Full-time users, again, position screen and the work area and monitors, making sure that they're straight on as much as you can, so that we're not having to look down or look up at those laptop monitors. Use a separate keyboard or mouse if you can. So if there's an option for that, to utilize that, then certainly great, because now we can set that up and we've only got to worry about looking at the monitor for the laptop. So taking breaks as we're utilizing some of these office ergonomics. So taking breaks can be, a beneficial thing for keyboarding and other types of ways to prevent the MSD. So many breaks, not from work, rather than just a short break to where maybe we stand up, we stretch our arms, we stretch our hands, things of that nature, just so that we're not in that posture, for the duration that we're, stretching out our bodies to be able to, or stretching out our muscles to be able to help with those things and reduce some of these types of injuries. Exercise, again, some of the things that we can do, finger extensions, wrist stretches, stretching your wrist forward or backwards, shoulders, shrugging your shoulders, just keeping it moving so that, again, it's not just stuck in that position for that whole time, that we're actually rotating it. We're getting some circulation through. We're getting some things that help or are beneficial for, our muscles and our extremities. All right. And then with the neck, again, turning your neck, stretching your neck, twisting, things of that nature. So again, we're getting that circulation going. We're continuously, making sure that that's loose. Arms and back. So just some examples here: arm behind the head, bent forward, knees to chest, back bent. So again, we're just stretching we're stretching these body parts out, so that, again, we're not just locked into that posture, and we are able to try to help prevent a lot of these types of injuries. And then finally here, key points to remember for industrial and office workers. So again, ergonomics or body mechanics fits the task to the worker to reduce the injuries. So again, whatever that looks like, not all employees are going to be exactly the same. So trying to make sure that we are matching that work area up to the employee, as opposed to just having one area and everybody has to operate it. And depending upon the individuals, that can be challenging, just from physical things, maybe height or things like that, that could cause these types of issues. So adjusting that work area to fit the worker. MSD or other disorders, nervous system, soft tissues. So again, keeping that kind of stuff in mind. These are types of things that, over time are going to cause certainly issues in the body, and it may take some time to recognize these. You may not, you may just think, well, it's just part of aging, or whatever the case is. But again, if we're continuously doing a particular job, and each day that we're finished with that, hey, I kind of, I'm sore in my back or whatever, we should probably be taking a look and see what can we do to adjust that. Risk factors, again, repetitive, forceful, awkward positions, stress, and contact stress, vibration, things that our body is not used to dealing with all the time. Taking a look and see how can we minimize those areas. Set up your workstation to minimize your strain. So again, adjusting your work area to fit your worker. If it's an office setting, things like that, making sure that all of our products or all of our tools that we're going to use, whether it be mouse, telephone, pencil sharpener, I don't know if we use those anymore, but everything is within arm's reach so that we're not having to stretch over or reach high or reach low to do that operation, that it's all right there in front of us. And then most common symptoms are, pain and swelling. So if we start to see that, feel that, tingling, things like that, there should be red flags. So we take a look and see, hey, well, what can we do to adjust that? Let somebody know, certainly report that. And then also look at that process. What do we need to do to change that process? And then perform tasks safely by, correct posture. So again, making sure that as we are working in our office areas or working in the office space, that we're maintaining the best postures we can, and we're not, today's day and age, a lot of people working from home, we're not laying in the bed and trying to operate our computer, or we're in other, awkward positions trying to do the work, that we are in a comfortable position, whether it be a good chair, with arms rest, back rest, all of that to maintain that good posture. All right. So with that said, that'll end today's session. If you've got any questions, certainly reach out and, ask those. If you do need assistance as far as, looking at some of these programs, certainly reach out to us and we can help with that as well. We've got some tools that we can send you, or we could, even come out and develop that, or help you to adjust those areas. But regardless, we're here to make sure that we try to prevent as much as we can. We get in front of these types of things, is the goal for our risk management team. So if there's no questions, then thank you for your time, and we'll see you next month.